Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome everyone to this remote meeting of the Eastbourne Borough Council Planning Meeting on 15th of December 2020. I'm Councillor Jim Murray, Chair of this committee, and this is our fourth meeting to be held remotely in accordance with the recently published government regulations. For those participating in the meeting or watching on live stream, please bear with us if we have any technical difficulties. And I apologise for the late delay, that was all my fault. I will now take instructions, attendance and substitutes and declarations of interest. Can I ask my fellow committee members to introduce themselves to the listeners via a roll call? And this is to be done in alphabetical order in accordance with the published agenda. And I'll ask that each confirms their full name and if they are acting as a substitute and whether they wish to make a declaration of interest in any of the items on the agenda. I'm going to start with Councillor Peter Diplock.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Peter Diplock from Old Town, Deputy Chair, and I have no interests to declare. Thank you.
Councillor Jane Lamb.
Councillor Jane Lamb, Meads Ward, I have no interest to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Robin Maxted.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Robin Maxted, Upperton Ward, I have no interests to declare. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Haran Mia.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Mia Langley Ward, and I have no interest to declare. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murdoch.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Colin Murdoch, Ratton Ward, and I have no interest to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Barry Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have an interest to declare, and it's a predetermination. Did you want me to declare that now or when it comes up on the item on the agenda?
We've been asking you to declare now, so if you declare that now.
Councillor Barry Taylor, Meads Ward, and I had a predetermination on the item on the agenda, which is item 5, the Bayview Holiday Park. I was against the loss of 53 caravan and camper van parking pitches there because it would impact on the number of camper vans parked along the seafront, which is a major problem. And as I brought it up at the pre-meeting with yourself, Mr. Chairman, you suggested that I'd predetermined, and I think you were absolutely right. And so I'm declaring that now, and I will leave the meeting. And as there's only one item, I will not come back, and wish you all a very happy Christmas.
Thank you very much, Councillor Taylor. Yeah, and you are free to leave the meeting. Councillor Vaughan.
Good evening. My name is Councillor Candy Vaughan. I'm in Langley Ward and I have no interests to declare.
Thank you very much. Councillor Taylor must integrate. I understand that Councillor Taylor will be excluded from the meeting during the discussion in item agenda 5. Because there's only one item on the agenda this evening, it's okay for Councillor Taylor to leave the meeting completely. So he is now left and is taking no further part in the discussions. Also joining us are the officers, Mr. Lee Palmer, Interim Head of Planning, Neil Collins, Specialist Advisor Planning, and Mrs. Helen Monaghan, Planning Lawyer, who are in attendance to present the reports and respond to any questions from the members. Democratic Services Officer Emily Horn is also in attendance, and other Democratic Service officers are assisting in the background of this meeting. Please can I ask all participants ensuring their microphones have been muted when not speaking. If you have any connectivity issues, you may find it will help if you turn off your camera when not speaking. I will now take item 1, minutes from the last meeting. I will take your silence as agreeance that the minutes are fine. Thank you very much. So these minutes have been approved. Agenda item 4, any items of urgency. There is an officer's update, which is a supplementary report which has been sent out to the members on email. Please can any members indicate now if they have not received the addendum? I'll ask Mr. Palmer to highlight the key matters in the update as part of his presentation on each item. Now, to ensure that all parties are clear of the Council's constitution, the committee is not in a position to accept any new additional documentation sent to us electronically today, although previously submitted documents will be referred to as part of the officer's presentation where appropriate. We now come to the planning applications, and for those unfamiliar with the procedure of the planning applications, first there is a presentation by the planning officers. Then we would normally hear public speakers. However, live public speaking has temporarily been suspended during remote meetings. Instead, public speakers have been invited to send in their speeches, which will be read out by one of the officers. If any speeches have been received, they will be heard in this order. Up to one speech from objectors, up to one speech from supporters, and up to one speech from a ward member. Each objector, supporter or ward member is allowed 3 minutes to talk. The committee is then invited to discuss the application, and I will ask members to raise their hands if they wish to speak. Can all councillors, officers and participants please clearly state their name each time they speak so that it is clear to members of the public listening who is speaking. Once all of the committee members who wish to speak on the application have done so, I will ask if there is a proposer and a seconder for the officer's recommendation, and if so, we will move to the votes. And please remember that we need to wait until after the discussion before we make any proposals for either changes or for approval. If the officer's recommendation is lost, I will ask for an alternative proposal. I will ask the proposer to state the planning reason for their proposal and ask whether we have a seconder. If necessary, I will seek officer advice on the reason given and provide the proposer the chance to respond and confirm their proposal. If this is seconded, then we will vote on the item. To vote, I will call the name of each committee member present in the alphabetical order. Please clearly state whether or not you are for or against or abstaining from the vote. Members must not leave the room during the meeting. It is essential that members are present for the entire presentation and discussion of the application to be able to vote on them on that item. If a member very briefly loses their internet connection, this may not disqualify them from voting on the item, provided they seek clarification as to anything they may have missed as soon as possible after they have reconnected. So just to clarify that, if you lose connection for sort of 10-15 seconds and I notice it, then I will just ask you if you wanted to clarify any items. If we lose you for more than sort of 2 or 3 minutes, then I'm afraid you will be not allowed to take part in the continued discussion and you won't be able to vote. So just need to check that Councillor Taylor has left the room. I can see everybody on the screen. Councillor Taylor is no longer there. We move to item number 5, application number 200180, proposed siting of 71 static holiday caravans in lieu of 94 touring caravans, and read the layout of the park, resulting in 91 static holiday caravans in total, together with an environmental improvements joint authority application with Wealdon District Council. This is due to the fact that it's right on the border of Eastbourne and Pevensey Bay. So I now invite Mr. Collins to introduce the report.
Neil Collins here, Specialist Advisor within Planning. I'm going to take you through this presentation for Bayview Holiday Park, and the application site is up on the screen there, and you can see that outlined in red. This application will be familiar to members because it was considered at the last committee meeting in November. The site straddles the boundary, as the Chair said, between Eastbourne Borough Council Authority Area and Wealdon District Council, and that can be seen with the boundary in red, the red line on the screen. So just to clarify, the application seeks permission for the siting of 71 static caravans on the site. And that would amount to a total of 91 caravans across the whole site. 41 of those will be located within Eastbourne Borough's area here. and that would replace 53 touring caravan pitches. So the committee deferred the application previously in order that 2 requests could be put forward to the applicant, and they included the first one, a reduction in the occupancy period in any given year, and the second one was retention of a portion of touring caravan pitches rather than wholesale replacement with static caravans across the site. And following engagement, sorry, I'll just move on to the next slide, which shows the arrangement of the static caravans on the site. Officers have engaged with the applicant regarding the request from members, and a reduced occupancy of 10 rather than the previously proposed 11 months of the year is now proposed, and this would exclude specifically the months of January and February. This is supported by officers and would provide a clear definition regarding the approved occupancy during the year, which obviously would exclude those particular months. And this is reflected in a revised condition, which I'll come on to. The applicant has responded to the request as well, and puts forward some perceived benefits, and they include the applicant has put forward they would actually retain all of the static caravans within the proposal. So there has been a so there wouldn't be any touring pitches proposed, and have put forward some benefits which would include improvement to the quality of the accommodation at the site. Holiday makers using static caravans are much more likely to eat out in the local area rather than to be self-catering, and there's a perceived benefit in terms of the local economy in that respect. The benefits to local trades from the capital investment in the works, which are quite considerable in this instance, and the reduced impact on the local highway network from caravans using, accessing and egressing the site. So the improvement of the quality of the accommodation is a key objective in policy, in particular policy D3, tourism culture, and on that basis, officers recommend this application for approval subject to conditions. As I mentioned previously, there is a revision to the conditions as previously presented to the committee, and that's just to reflect the now proposed 10-month occupancy rather than the previous 11-month occupancy. Back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer, do we have any public speakers?
Through you, Chair, Lee Palmer. No, we have no public speakers on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. So in that case, then I'm going to hand over to the members to open discussions. Who would like to go first? Mr. Diplock, Councillor Diplock.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Neil, for the presentation. Obviously, we looked at this one detail at the last meeting. I'd just like to say thank you to the applicant for addressing some of the committee's concerns by way of a reduction from 11 months occupancy down to 10 months. I go camping myself. I enjoy camping. I know the difference between static and tent camping, and while I might mourn the loss of tent camping capacity, it's nice, I think, that this offers a more year-round holiday option by way of static caravans, a bit more weather resistant in the off camping season, and I think it will support those businesses at the harbour, which have been under the cosh this last year. So yeah, I'd thank the applicant for addressing that. Still feels a lot to me, but I think on the balance of things, I'm pleased, and I'm pleased with this one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to point out an anomaly in the papers. On page 13, paragraph 813, it refers to 11 months of the year. And then on page 17, paragraph 1012, it reverts back to 10 months of the year. So I'm assuming that paragraph 1012 is the correct one and the other one's been inadvertently included. Is that correct, please, Mr. Palmer?
Through you, Chair, in direct response to that question, yes, you are correct in that assumption. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to make a couple of points about this. First of all, there's a loss of 53 touring pitches in this application and an overall loss of 12 pitches. So you've got a loss of spaces, and I accept that you know, there have been improvements to the provision and the site, which is very good to hear. But this does have an impact on touring caravans and camper vans. In Meads, which is the ward I represent, we do have quite a big problem of touring caravans and camper vans parking on the seafront, which cause a lot of problems both for residents and for visitors. So I think in particular that there's an impact from reducing the number of pitches that are proposed in the current application will have a greater impact on the problems we're experiencing on the seafront. Also, the reduction in the months of the year that it's available for to 10 months makes it not massively different. I was hoping for a little bit more than that in the referral that we made. So there are 2 points. The months of occupancy, which have only been reduced by 1 month. And the second one is the proportion of pitches, and the balance between static and touring has not been addressed, and there is no provision for touring caravans or camper vans at all. Yeah, thank you. They're the points I'd like to make. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Maxted.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Robin Maxted, Upperton Ward. I echo Councillor Diplock's welcome that the occupancy, the maximum occupancy of any of these static caravans or mobile homes or has been reduced from 11 months to 10 months. So I do think that's quite significant. So I do welcome that. I've got a couple of points to make, but on that, I was just wondering whether that would be for the whole site or just for the Eastbourne static caravans. Maybe Mr. Collins can answer in a few minutes. I'm a little bit frustrated in the lack of information regarding the application that was made and passed by Wealdon District Council. There's no, and so it's very difficult for me to look at just this portion of land in isolation of the whole plot. And I went onto Wealdon District Council website, and it absolutely it's no use to me at all because there's no information. I can't find any on it. So the concerns that I have is that it shows just one car park space between each of the mobile homes. Now, I think this is quite a common thing for local authorities who license these holiday parks. They only allow one vehicle between each mobile home. So I'm assuming that that's what the situation is. And there seems to be no other car parking whatsoever on the whole site, and certainly there's no mention to it. And I would be very concerned that where people who maybe come to visit people who are holidaying at these static homes, and someone say I know someone's come down from Scotland to stay there, I want to pop along, where would I park? So that's one thing, and I was just wondering whether this was a concern. Also, so refuse, there's some mention of a turning circle in the officer's statement, but looking at the plan, I can't see where there's a turning circle. So perhaps Mr. Collins can reassure me as to the provisions being made for refuse collection, which will probably be quite considerable. So if I could just leave it at that, Mr. Collins, for you for the moment. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. We had quite a few questions there. So is the restrictions for time allowance Eastbourne side only? 1 car per plot, is that normal? Is there other car parking available on site? Is this a concern, or does it comply with sort of normal standards set up for a static home site? And are we happy with the turning circles that have been set out?
Thank you, Chairman. In Lee Palmer speaking, if I can answer those questions in turn, and Neil can pick up the ones that I missed. Last one first. In terms of the turning circle, members will recall that on the Eastbourne side, at the end of each avenue of caravans, there's a sort of communal bin store area, so that the homeowner, the occupier, would deposit their waste in a communal facility. The refuse lorry will arrive down the central spine road, and the turning circle is a hammerhead at the end of the spine road. So they will do that manoeuvre and then come back out again. In terms of the parking spaces, they are tandem spaces. So whilst there is one space shown dividing each caravan, there's space enough for 2 cars in depth, and that will be controlled going forward through the layout. In terms of additional parking, there is no additional visitor parking on the site apart from indiscriminate parking. Along the spine road, you could see 2 or 3 informal spaces along the spine road. That does give you that opportunity. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. We missed out one question there. Was it Eastbourne only?
I'll just respond on some of the other points that were made. This is Neil Collins speaking again. There was a question about the impact on parking of caravans, camper vans on the seafront in other areas of the borough. The answer to that question is that the unauthorised parking anywhere in the borough or outside the borough for that matter is something for highways authorities to consider, and the police. It would remain the responsibility for those authorities to look at that particular situation. It is not it's not considered that would be exacerbated directly through this particular proposal, and that any impact in terms of unauthorised parking, by caravans or any other vehicles on the public highway in anywhere in the borough is to be dealt with separately by the relevant authority. There was another question in terms of the conditions for the use, so the 10-month period of use, and whether that would be for the whole of the site or just for the Eastbourne site. It is intended that this, with joint applications across borough boundaries, we work together with the neighbouring boundary, and that's what is intended in this case. Wilden have sought to, they've resolved to approve the application. They are awaiting our decision. It is our intention to ensure that the application goes through with the same conditions. If that is not the case, and if that is an issue of contention on the Wilden side, which I don't consider it would be, then we would need to bring this back to committee if members consider that to be the option. Really, this is something that we're looking at making a decision in terms of the impact on the Eastbourne side, but we would like to marry up the conditions which would detail that 10-month occupancy period with the conditions for Wilden. Effectively, one plan permission would be granted as a result in any case, but we would need to make sure that there was agreement on both sides.
Okay, we've lost Councillor Murdoch. Do we know where he is? Is he able to come back into the meeting?
Councillor Murray, Emily Horn, committee officer speaking here. We are trying to make contact with Councillor Murdoch as you're speaking, and I'll be in touch in due course. Thank you.
Okay. If he misses much more, we're going to have to exclude him.
Noted.
Have we made any contact at all?
We are doing so at this very moment in time.
Okay.
If we can just, this is Helen Monaghan speaking, planning lawyer. If we can just pause for a couple of minutes and see whether he can be brought back online. But otherwise he will be discluded because it does look like he's missed more than a minute or so. So we can't allow him to lose any more time. So we'll wait, see if he can be brought back. If not, he'll have to be excluded, sorry.
Thank you. So
Thank you,
yes, if you could bear with us for a minute or two, we'll just give him a chance to sort of try and reboot his computer. The joys of the internet. So, Councillor Murdoch, if I can come to you, did you hear the response from Mr. Palmer?
No, because all of a sudden it just completely all went, and I had to reboot and log in. I hadn't lost internet; it just completely went. So no, I didn't hear the response from Mr. Palmer.
Okay, I will quickly sum up the response from there. So, with regards to the car parking spaces, although it only says one car parking space, there is room there for two. So there's possibilities of visitors being able to park on next to the caravan that they're going to be staying at. Turning circles for the waste material. There is a hammerhead at the end of each one of the supply roads, so the lorries can go in there, reverse, and then come out again. The other parts were picked up by Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins, I'm going to get you to repeat what you said, please, so that Mr. Murdoch is able to hear all of it.
Thank you, Chair. No problem. Just in summary of the comments that I made in response to some of the questions, the first one was to do with a question about indiscriminate seafront parking by camper vans or other touring vehicles elsewhere in the borough, and whether that would be exacerbated by the site. It's not considered that would be the case by officers. That is dealt with separately by other highways or police authorities in terms of whether there is unauthorised parking elsewhere in the borough. Otherwise, if parking is made, if caravans are parked elsewhere in the borough that is authorised, that is not something that we would look to control in any case. The other point that I picked up was to do with conditions regarding the occupancy. The period of occupancy was being reduced to from 11 to 10 months, and whether that would be for the whole of the site rather than just the Eastbourne portion. My answer is that we would, Wilden have resolved to grant planning permission. They are waiting for us to make our decision, and we will be liaising with them to grant, hopefully on the same basis in terms of the conditions for across the site for the new static units. However, we would need to agree on that going forward. But I can confirm that in terms of the Eastbourne portion of the site, that is the condition that would apply to those particular units in this case.
Thank you. Councillor Vaughan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, we've got the refuse and the community refuse where it's all collected. Is there going to be recycling there as well to encourage all the visitors to actually recycle and not just put it all into one? Thank you.
Mr. Collins?
Yes, so a response to that is that there would be recycling and refuse facilities made available at the site.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, you've asked to come back in.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank Mr. Collins for his response and to make the point that the parking of camper vans in particular, particularly on Mead Seafront, is problematic, and there's very little the police or the Highways Authority can actually do when people are staying overnight or for prolonged months of occupation, with lack of sanitation and things in some of the vans. So it is an issue and it isn't easy to deal with, and we're certainly logging all the incidents at the moment and reporting them to Neighbourhood First. And because this hasn't come in yet on this site, we can't really assess the impact on the rest of the seafront because it hasn't actually been put in place yet. But it is a concern because it's a major concern, particularly on the Mead Seafront, from residents about the impact of parking, which is often prolonged. It's not just the odd night or a few hours in the day. So I just wanted to make that point, which is why I have taken the stance I have on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the comments from the officers are saying that they don't believe that we can blame any extra vehicle camper vans on this particular site. I think what tends to happen is that people are trying to save themselves a few quid by not parking on the camping sites, and they're parking on the road. If they're going to be that type of person, then they're going to be that type of person. The people who are going to fight, who want to use a campsite to park, are going to find another campsite to park. So we can't really blame extra traffic or an extra camper vans on this particular unit. I think that's what we're trying to say. Councillor Murdoch, I'm going to come to you next, and then I've got Councillor Maxted.
Thank you, Chair. I have concerns because I believe, losing touring caravans. Now, I know if we lost the touring caravans from this site, how many more areas within Eastbourne do we have provisions for touring caravans? So there's a question. But if I go to page 12, 8.5, it actually says in there, the proposed change from a site using touring caravans to a static caravan is for tourist accommodation only. And then if I then go on further to page 17, 10.11, it's got the caravan shall only be occupied for holiday accommodation purposes. The owner operators, now you must understand, these statics will be sold or for a set amount of period, and the owners do not have to let them out to other people. They can keep them for their 10 months only. And so we will be losing tourist accommodation. We can't enforce what they do with them once they purchase them. But whereas if they're ordinary, it's an ordinary campsite, then people will come for their week or 2 week holidays. So we are losing tourist accommodation really, where people can actually come and visit. I've actually spoken to a few people down here, and the situation is they enjoy this area as it's a recreational area as well for children who actually come there, camp there, bring their motorhomes, whatever, and it's more of a community, and people come down from Scotland and everywhere. But as you know, once this becomes statics, people with static caravans buy them for themselves and they don't always let them out. So we could be causing, less holiday people to be coming and using this area, and it could become a first home for lots of people. I know they have to have another address, but they seem to disappear for 2 months and then they come there and live there all year round. Whereas, when we have it as an ordinary campsite, it is then used as a campsite all year round or for 10 months of the year where people are visiting our town, which is what we actually want. So I have concerns of turning it into another static caravan site, bearing in mind how many, if the officers can answer me that, how many other campsites do we have within the Eastbourne area for us to have people visiting for camping and ordinary caravans? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I just remind you that we can't make assumptions that because we closed down, well, we allow this not to be a touring caravan site, that it's going to overflow into the rest of the town. That's an assumption which we can't prove and we can't sustain. And we can't also assume that all of these caravans are going to be sold off. The sensible money tells you that you can get £500 a week for one of these when you rent them. So it's much more sensible to actually rent them out than it is to hire them out long term. And I believe, Mr. Palmer, Mr. Collins, that we have restrictions on there that they're not allowed to, or that they are planning to use these for Airbnb or for sort of weekly rents.
Thank you. Neil Collins speaking. Yeah, just to respond to those points, I will echo what the chair has mentioned in terms of the preempting the use of the static caravans. Whilst I understand the concerns, what's being proposed is what we need to consider in terms of the use. The use being proposed is for holiday letting accommodation, and that is what it would be approved as part of this, if planning permission is granted. We do have controls which are recommended by way of condition. Those controls include the occupancy and various controls over the type of occupancy, including for primary accommodation for people's first address, for example. But perhaps more crucial to the consideration of this application, the occupancy level would preclude, in terms of the number of months in a year, would preclude its changing its use class through mismanagement. For example, the 2 months break in any year would prevent a change of use outside of the control of the local authority. So what's being proposed is for holiday letting accommodation, and that's what we need to be considering. In terms of the other touring pitches within the borough, I don't have the numbers available to me, which would give stats in terms of particular provision within the borough. And of course, the provision in any area is also shared with neighbouring boroughs as well. So Wealdon have a number of touring pitch accommodation provision within that borough, and that also provides the area with that kind of accommodation. But really, the important point I just want to make is that it is really about the type of accommodation that's being proposed, and that it would be an improvement in the accommodation, and that's why this is being proposed, being recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Robin Maxted, Upperton Ward. I think Councillor Murdoch raises a very good point, and I was interested to hear Mr. Collins' response. I get the understanding from what you said, Mr. Collins, that the owner of the park is going to use the static caravans for holiday lettings rather than selling them to individuals who may indeed, as Councillor Murdoch has suggested, just use them 2 or 3 times a year, and then the rest of the year they remain vacant, because people don't have to let their caravans out if they don't want to. So there is that risk then that it actually does not enhance the tourist aspect of the site if that were to happen. So my first question is this actually the case? The owners of the holiday home park, the tourist park, are going to maintain ownership these static caravans, and they will organise the renting out for tourists, or are they going to be sold and for people to occupy? So that's my first point. My second is going back to the car parking and what Mr. Palmer had said. There's no mention in the statement or actually on the plan showing that the car parking spaces are tandem and big enough to accommodate 2 cars. Now, assuming that that's okay as far as the licensing is concerned, that people can have 2 vehicles between each static caravan, I would like to propose that this is an actual condition of the planning consent, should that be allowed tonight, that each static caravan should have 2 car parking spaces attached to it. I know Mr. Palmer said that there were areas on the service road with showing parking spaces, but these parking spaces that are shown actually are attached to those static caravans that are nearby, that they're next to. So I would like that actually spelt out in a condition that there were 2 car parking spaces per static caravan, please. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Neil Collins speaking. I will respond to the first point, which is to do with the potential passing of ownership of those static caravans, or perhaps more crucially to this, the potential subletting which could also occur. I draw members' attention to the use that's being proposed here, the restrictions on that use, and that within the use that's being proposed, which is for holiday letting accommodation, ownership is not an issue, a material planning consideration that we can take into account. Just like any other tourist accommodation, privately owned accommodation can be sublet, change ownership following the grant of planning permission. That would be the case here. But the more crucial point is how to control the use. And I draw attention to the conditions that have been recommended in the officer report, and in particular, condition at paragraph 10.10, caravan occupation. The caravan should only be occupied for holiday accommodation purposes and should not at any time be occupied as a person's sole or main place of residence. The owners' operators shall maintain an up-to-date register of the names of all owners, occupiers of individual static caravans on the site and of their main home address. It goes on beyond that. I understand that the concerns are that this could be secondary accommodation used for the owner's own holiday letting accommodation. That is not something that can be controlled by way of planning conditions or by the grant of this permission. And it's not considered to be something that would be a robust reason for refusal in this case. The intention, which officers agree with, is that this is from the perspective of making this a viable business, that letting of these proposed static caravans is the most viable use for this site, and would allow for the best possible way forward from a private investment perspective. I think that was everything. Oh, sorry, no, there was the parking as well. So 2 car parking spaces. It's very difficult to comment on that at this stage. And I think I would have to take advice from legal, I think, about how to proceed on this, because we can, of course, request that kind of accommodation, parking accommodation to be made available. But I can't say that is something that can be accommodated without understanding the space requirements and how that would fit within the site. So it's whether we are, if we've resolved to grant planning permission, whether we could move forward, trying to secure that. But if it wasn't possible, have discretion for officers to make the decision in terms of granting planning permission, so giving delegated authority to do so. In any case, I'll just remind members that The proposal here, sorry, the recommendation here is for delegated authority so that we can grant on the same date as Wealdon and in line with those conditions across the board.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Yeah, that was my concern, that we wouldn't actually be able to have within our remit to be able to put that condition in place. But if we can get it in place, I personally am happy to leave it to delegated authority for you to negotiate that if this does go through this evening. Councillor Lamb, I'll give you one more go coming forward.
Sorry, before Councillor Lamb, before you ask any questions, if I could just say something else about the car parking situation. The impact of that would be more hard surfacing on the site, and I'll just urge members to consider, further hard surfacing of the site given the site's location and the requirement for things like drainage and biodiversity across the site.
Okay, so in view of that, Mr. Councillor Maxted, I personally would not want to see more concrete on the site. We're saying that there's the potential for 2 cars to be parked next to each other, but we don't really want to make it a condition that they have to have 2 car parking spaces there. So I wouldn't want to make that a condition deferred to delegated powers myself. I don't know whether or not you would like to withdraw that suggestion.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Robin Maxted. At the moment, I feel there's an inadequate amount of car parking space there. If it's just showing 1 car parking space per static caravan and no other car parking spaces whatsoever. I don't think that's an adequate amount of car parking spaces if it's going to be used as a holiday letting area. So that. I mean, to me, that's a big concern. I take Mr. Collins' point, but you can get hard standing where drainage can still occur. So again, I don't take that point. It can be built. I don't know what the materials are called, but you can have hard standing and allow for drainage. So at this moment in time, if that wasn't made a condition, and there's an absence of other car parking spaces, I don't feel as though I could support this application as it is. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's go to Councillor Lamb, and then I'm going to come back to that point.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Jane Lamb. I just wanted to make the point that we have no evidence either way on the impact of touring caravans on other parts of the seafront. So we can't have a preconception about that. But the loss of 53 touring pitches is quite considerable. And because we have no overall picture of how many touring pitches there are in the town, it's very difficult to see the impact. But I think touring caravans are to be encouraged, that we want to encourage visitors to not maybe stay in a static place, but to move around the town, to spend money in the town, to take advantage of the wonderful amenities we've got. And I'm concerned about that loss. And I know we can't project, but we don't know either way. We don't know which way the impact will be. And all I can say is that we already have a significant impact in Meads of touring caravans parked, sometimes for lengthy periods of time and sometimes causing hazards and problems. They're the points I wanted to make. Thank you for listening, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Diplock.
Thank you, Chair. Just an observation on the parking that's been mentioned. Just an observation. I would not be at all surprised if many people who go to visit holidaymakers staying on site don't park somewhere within the Sovereign Harbour retail complex there. There's lots of parking available there, and arrange to meet those they're visiting on the site there. Again, boosting businesses around there rather than driving direct to the site and seeking to park on the site itself. Just an observation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Collins, are you able to bring the map up again so that we can have another look, please? and then perhaps talk us through where the parking is or isn't.
Sorry, could you just confirm, Chair, if you can see that on the screen at the moment?
We can do.
So this plan
isn't.
Unfortunately, I don't think I can do that with this presentation. However, this is probably as detailed as the arrangement is going to show in any case. But you can perhaps see that with each caravan, which is grey, there would be a white bay, which would be a single car parking space, which will come directly off of the service road. So going back to the point that I made about whether there was enough space to make that to increase that, I'm not sure. I can't make the decision at this stage as to whether that is actually possible, and it would be a requirement to liaise with the applicant on that point to see exactly what was possible. We would be able to do so, just put that forward to them, but I can't clarify that at this particular point.
We have a white block on the Wealden side. It looks as though there's a couple of buildings there, but then there's some space behind. Is that available for parking at all?
Again, thank you. I just can't. I can't confirm that in terms of whether that would be made available for parking or not.
Okay, thank you. Having stayed at a few of these places myself, this looks like a very standard layout to me that is applied to all static caravan sites across the country. I find it difficult that we would start saying that we want to reduce or we would refuse this on the basis that there isn't enough car parking in the area. Councillor Diplock has said there is car parking just across the way over here, where they could sort of park up. And if they are coming to visit somebody, then they're not going to be staying particularly very long. Potentially, I don't know. This looks like a very standard layout for a static caravan site that is applied across the country. We would be getting on very sticky ground if we refuse this on the fact that there doesn't appear to be enough car parking spaces. I can't see any more hands going up, so I'm quite happy to move this from the chair that for approval. If I have anybody to second me, Councillor Lamb. You're muted, Councillor Lamb.
Sorry, Chair, I wasn't putting my hand up to second you. I was asking for a named vote, please, when we do come to the vote. Thank you.
Councillor Diplock, I saw your hand go up. You happy to second? Thank you. So on that basis, we have a proposer and a seconder for approval of the sites. Catch up with my notes here. So I'll now call each councillor in turn to vote either for, against or abstain. And if you have lost connection and are unable to vote, please state so and let me know now. Councillor Murdoch did lose some time, but we did catch him up, so he is able to vote. So we'll start with Councillor Peter Diplock. For, against or abstain?
For, and I did not lose connection at any point.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb?
Against, and I didn't lose connection during the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Maxted?
Thank you, Chair. Abstain, and I didn't lose any connection. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mia?
For, and I didn't lose any connection through the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murdoch?
Against, I lost connection for a short period, but did catch up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vaughan?
For, I didn't lose any of my internet connection.
Thank you. And I, Councillor Jim Murray, will be voting for, and I also did not lose any connection. I wasn't keeping up with that. Emily, if we could have a count.
Yes, Chair, Emily Horn, Committee Officer speaking. We have 4 members for the application and 2 against with 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have, just to confirm, we have made that a named vote.
I have noted the votes for you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So application number 200180, proposal site setting of 71 static caravans. Planning permission has been granted on a vote of 4 to 2 to 1. So the planning permission has been approved. If we have any comments from the officers, I'll take your silence as being no.
I'd like to say, Chair, it's to delegate to officers. It's not planning permission to be approved. It's delegate to officers so as it mirrors with Wealdon. Can we just make that certain? That's what we've done.
Thank you. So this is planning permission has been approved, which has been delegated to the officers. So once the Wealdon have sorted themselves out as well, it's a negotiation between the officers, and the officers have our approval to do what needs to be done. So that means that this meeting has now come to an end. Thank you very much for your time and the in-depth conversation. Apologies for the staggered start, and have a great Christmas, everyone. I would normally buy you all a mince pie, but unfortunately we're away from each other at the moment. So have a great Christmas and a great New Year. See you soon.